We spend quite a bit of time talking about the best business schools in the world. On that list, IE University. It's one of those schools. On this year's Bloomberg Business Week Best Business School rankings, it comes in at number 11th in Europe, and they're growing. Manuel Muniz is provost at IE University and also chair of IE New York College. How are you?
Hey, wonderful. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I say welcome, but part of the big news is that you're growing here in New York. So talk a little bit about, we spend a lot of time talking about international business schools and the way that there are campuses in multiple parts of the world. What we don't often see is European schools expanding here in the U.S. Talk a little bit about the thinking behind that.
Well, so for us, this is a major move because it's not just a campus. So we become the sole members, which is basically where the custodian. We've taken over a college, a pre-existing college here in Lower Manhattan in Soho. So we're a fully licensed higher education institution in the U.S. We will issue U.S. degrees. We're accredited by the Middle States Commission, one of the big accreditors in the U.S. So this is a long-term, serious commitment of ours to have a transatlantic footprint and to run programs, fundamentally graduate programs in the business space on both sides of the Atlantic.
But is it for European students who want exposure to New York? Is it for American students who you want to funnel then into a European program also? Who's it geared toward?
So this is a key question. Our student body, our current student body in Spain is super international. So about 90% of our students are non-Spanish. Many of them come from the US, but many other European countries. So our project here is not so much to come into New York to recruit exclusively American students and maybe compete in a more head-on way with some excellent business schools that you have in New York and in the US. It's about opening New York to our already very international student body. So our students will be able to begin in Spain, in Europe, and finish here, and vice versa. So it's about making the higher education landscape in New York maybe a little bit more diverse than it already is, and bringing a different kind of student to New York.
Well, in addition to the student body, talk to us a little bit about some of the offerings here when it comes to the programs that will be taught.
So the big two areas of focus of the college are business and sustainability. So we're very focused in these two spaces. We have a master's in business for social impact and sustainability. We're going to be launching new programs in finance and in management. We also have a program in sustainable fashion, which was already offered by the college before we arrived. So those are the two areas of footprint, and we think that New York is very strong in these two areas. The business community is significant. The type of experience that we can build for the student in these areas is very significant. So we see real synergies between what we do in Europe and what we're going to be able to do here with that offering.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your other experience. You were state secretary at the Spanish Foreign Ministry.
Yes.
You are an expert when it comes to geopolitics and international affairs.
Yep.
Kind of a perfect day to be speaking with you, given what we saw happen over the weekend in Syria.
Yeah, extraordinary.
What we saw last week with South Korea.
Yes.
Given what we're seeing in Eastern Europe with Ukraine, all against a backdrop of a changing administration here in the U.S. and this idea globally that we're seeing sort of a decline in the belief of institutions, the decline of, quote unquote, liberalism around the world. How are you thinking about this?
So that's another very significant question, because if you think about it, the world seems to be moving in a direction of fracture. This is true politically, diplomatically. There's a more weakened multilateral architecture internationally, but also in the economic side of things, a real fracturing of international trade and investment. So then the question is, what is a European university making such a significant investment in the US and abroad? And the answer to this is that we're really doubling down on our vision of what international university should be about. We should be about building global environments, very diverse environments in our classrooms. Our students, the parents of our students, particularly in the undergrad, they want their children and they want themselves to have these very international experiences. They want to work in different geographies. So we're moving a little bit in the opposite direction of where our geopolitics are headed. Our geopolitics are headed towards fracture, and we're betting on interdependence. And I think this is the mission of academia. I mean, it is in our name. I mean, universities are supposed to be universal. They're supposed to be about bringing diverse points of view, building diverse kinds of learning environments and experiences for the students. So that's how our New York and US investment fits into a broader vision of what universities should be doing. But this is not risk-free. because we're rowing a little bit against the current of where our geopolitics are headed.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it feels like higher education has become politicized. I mean, you think about what happened on campuses across New York City, including throughout the spring. I mean, how are you thinking about that?
Well, so, I mean, it's not just what happened here. If you actually look at, there's a general trend of restriction to internationalization of universities. So there have been caps on international students in Australia, restrictions to teaching in English in the Netherlands, restrictions to visas for students in the UK. So if you take it as a whole, this symphony, sort of this concert of fracture, of growing, to some extent, nationalism and nationalistic policies is really trickling, I don't know if it's trickling up or down, but it's beginning to affect the higher education landscape. So we see this with concern, and we are willing to go against this trend, because I tell you, I mean, the value add of an education is significantly higher if you can build these different avenues, these different experiences. I'll give you a very specific example. Because we have the college in New York and it's going to be issuing American degrees, one of the huge benefits to our students is that they're going to be able to come study here, be embedded in New York, and once they graduate, they have a much easier access to the U.S. labor market if U.S. employers are willing to employ them through OPT schemes and others. No? This is the sort of thing that people in Germany, students in Germany, young people in Italy, young people in Canada really want. They want to be able to access universities and have these very different paths that open environments for them, professional, entrepreneurial environments. So, you know, we're going to fight this, you know, through how we behave as a university.
Do you think, you say you're going to fight it, you say that fractionalization is what's happening right now, but not necessarily the way that you see things going, at least at an academic level. Mm-hmm. Is this move toward populism around the world, especially in Europe and the United States, is this something that you see as a blip and short-lived, or is this something that is sort of the next era of our lives? Well,
so this requires a deeper answer, no? Because the question, I think the core question is, why are we seeing in a lot of the Western world, in advanced economies and liberal democracies, why are we seeing the rise of the extremes in the right and in the left, and the rise of populism?
Or the right and the left coming together to oust a prime minister in France, like last week.
I mean, this is part of this noise, of this symphony of disorder that we're living in our politics, and that it's affecting higher ed. If I had to summarize in one phrase why I think this is occurring is, if you look at the economic performance of advanced economies around the world over the last 30 years, you will see that there is one trend that repeats itself in many of these countries, and that is the hollowing of the middle of our income distribution through stagnation or income decline in real terms. That disappearance or that weakening of the middle is highly correlated with the disappearance of the middle of the political spectrum. So these trends are highly correlated. We simply do not know how to sustain an effective, liberal, deliberative democracy if the middle is under immense pressure. And the middle classes in most advanced economies are growingly precarious. They have difficulty accessing fundamental things. In fact, education is one of them, because it's been getting more and more expensive, but housing, healthcare, and many others, they view the future with greater concern. And one of the factors that is most highly correlated with support for populist forces is concerns about the future. So we live in a pessimistic environment about the future, one's own future, the future of the next generation, and that is driving our politics. So unless we address the underlying drivers of this fracture, our politics, the ripples of this in our politics and in our international politics, because this is shaping foreign policy, will become more and more severe. So I think it's a social contract, social justice, equity question that really lies beneath the issue that you raised. Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about this hollowing of the middle class and the correlation there that you've seen. I mean, do we have any good examples, I mean, in your academic work, of where that hollowing has happened but successfully has been made robust again? I mean, are there any good examples that we can look to?
Well, it's very tough, because I would say for the first time, and when I served in the Spanish government, it was right around the time where we made this diagnosis, where this diagnosis was properly configured, because 2016, 17, we had a number of shocks. We had the Brexit, we had the first Trump president, who was very unexpected in many ways. No? But nobody, I mean, there was really no consensus around the world as to why this was occurring. So the consensus is recent, this diagnosis that I just laid out. But I think if you went to the World Bank or the IMF or the Commission, now they'll tell you we have an equity and sustainability, sort of social sustainability issue in our society. So everybody's trying to implement policies that tackle this, like, for example, measures that change taxation, measures that implement better competition mechanisms, the strengthening of the welfare state in many places. So they're all trying. I don't think any government has the full recipe to address this, but we're all clearly, almost irrespective of the political color of the government, trying to bring growth to the middle.
Manuel Muniz, provost at IE University, also chair of IE New York College. Thank you so much for joining us. Do appreciate you taking the time this afternoon.